Welcome to the Nancy Drew channel, and here at this channel we're trying to identify the Zodiac killer. So this video I'm briefly going to explain the Zodiac murders, and then we're going to look at a suspect and see what we think. So the Zodiac crime started in Northern California in the San Francisco Bay Area. And the first one was at Lake Herman Road on December 20th, 1968, where the Zodiac shot and killed two teenagers. And then the next crime happened at Blue Rock Springs Park, about 5 miles west of the first crime. And the Zodiac shot two people. Darlene Ferrin passed away, and Michael Mayhew survived. And that occurred on July 4th, 1969, just before midnight. And then the next crime happened at Lake Berryessa, probably 60 miles north, where the Zodiac held a young college couple at gunpoint and had them tie themselves up, and then he took out a knife and stabbed both of them. And one of them lived and one died a few days later. And then the next crime happened in San Francisco, where the Zodiac shot and killed a cab driver on October 11th, 1969. And the reason we know it's the same person, or it was the Zodiac, is because after the murders, he notified the police and the local newspapers and wrote about the crimes. Now, 4 weeks after the second crime, he mailed 3 letters, one to the San Francisco Examiner, one to the San Francisco Chronicle, and one to the Vallejo Times-Herald. And he included a 3-part cipher, shown here in this newspaper article. As far as we know, the Zodiac wrote 21 letters. He wrote 8 letters in 1969, and then he wrote 7 letters in 1970, and all those letters were mailed from San Francisco. And then in 1971, he wrote 2 letters. And the first one there on March 13th was from Pleasanton, California, and then the other from San Francisco. And then in 1974, he wrote one on January 29th from San Francisco, another letter on May 8th from Alameda County, and then on July 8th, one from San Rafael. And then 4 years later, in 1978, he wrote his final letter, and it was mailed from San Francisco. Now, in Southern California, there was a murder committed in Riverside, California, a very quiet, simple city, at the Riverside City College on October 30th, 1966. And the person that committed that crime 4 weeks after it mailed a letter, the Daily Enterprise newspaper, and to the Riverside Police Department. Now, there were similarities to the Zodiac's letters and things that were not similar. So some similarities are that the letter has "I shall," and so does the Zodiac letter. And it says, "squirmed, choked her lips twitched, and she let out a scream." And in the Zodiac's letter, it has the squirm, scream, and twitched. And twitched is also misspelled. So this Riverside murder might not be a Zodiac murder, but it could be. And so we don't want to leave any stone unturned. So I'm investigating the crime, just that there's any person that we might be able to identify. And so here Cheri Jo Bates bought this VW, and one thought was that she bought it at Econo Motors, but a viewer said that the license plate holder has the name Carl Peele on it, and I didn't know about that. So I thought we would look at Mr. Carl Peele. And here I found a newspaper around that time, previous to Cheri's murder, where Carl Peele was selling automobiles at 13th Street in Maine in Riverside. I couldn't find a VW Beetle for sale, but I found many vehicles that he sold. Here, looking at a map of Riverside, you can see the red circle is the crime scene, and then downtown the black circle is where Econo Motors was, and then you can see the yellow circle is where Chris Peele worked at a auto dealership, and you can see that it's pretty close to the crime scene. Now on this notice in the newspaper, you can see that Carl A. Peele was married to Janet L. Peele, and they lived at 4175 Nestle in Riverside on October 5th, 1967. So here's a look at that house and what it looked like, except it didn't have the Honda automobile on the front lawn. Okay, and then going way back, Carl Alfred Peele was born on April 10th, 1923, which would have made him age 43 when Cheri Jo Bates was murdered. And then here's a look at his military registration card, and then on the back it gives a description, and you can see that he was white, 5 feet 8.5 inches tall, weighed 157, and he had a light complexion and brown hair. Now, not only was he in the military during World War II, or the end of it, he was also in the military during the Korean War from 50 to 53. And then after his service to his country, he was living in Riverside, California in 1955, working at the Mission Inn as a bar manager. And he lived at 1974 Milton. Now in 1968, he had some financial troubles and he declared bankruptcy. And this is a trustee's sale of his belongings and his wife's. And he moved to Northern California. And my sources show that he lived at some time at 1406 in San Francisco. And you can see this map here, and you can see it's not too far away from Geary and Mason, where the Zodiac killer grabbed a cab and drove to Washington and Cherry Streets. And then I found out that he lived in San Rafael in 1971. Here's a look at the San Rafael home. So is he the Zodiac killer? Did he kill Cheri Jo Bates at Riverside and then move to Northern California and kill David and Betty in Vallejo and kill Darlene and kill Cecilia Shepard at Lake Berryessa? Now, when he was up in Northern California, he was a real estate salesman. And one of the places that he sold homes or properties was at Clear Lake, which is north of Lake Berryessa. And when he was doing this job, something happened. On June 27th, 1971, something significant happened in his life. He was on a plane, and the plane crashed into the Pacific Ocean, and 24 passengers were involved in that plane crash, and 18 of them, I believe, died. And you can see right here, still missing was Carl Peele, age unknown, and San Francisco area address unknown. And in this newspaper article, you can see that he was listed as still missing, that he was age 41, which is not correct, and he lived at 1406 Polk Street in San Francisco. And then in this article, it lists him as dead, but his body not recovered. And here in this article, it lists him as among the dead, and said that he lived in San Rafael and that he had lived in Riverside, because this is from a Riverside newspaper. So the issue is what the Zodiac killer wrote in 1974, and he wrote that 1978 letter. So could Carl Peele be the Zodiac killer? Well, this ends this episode of Unsolved, and we continue on the road to finding the identity of the Zodiac killer in future episodes. So please follow the channel until I identify the Zodiac killer. Should have his identity by the end of this year.